This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and grow your income. This episode is another swing at solving the skilled labor shortage problem that everyone seems like in the construction industry is facing. In this podcast episode, I interview Luiza Mills. She's a vice president of human resources for a large electrical contracting firm. And we talk about some unique strategies to solve that skilled labor shortage problem. And in this episode, you're going to hear us talk about her advice for making your next big hire. If you're planning on hiring a project manager, superintendent, an executive, foreman, whatever it is, she's got some great advice for you if you're going to make a big hire in the near future. She also talks about some misconceptions about women in the trades. You're also going to hear about how lean manufacturing methods can help with your skilled labor shortage issues. Also, what can you as a small business owner do to help solve this issue? And one of the most interesting topics we talk about is how you may have customers that you don't even know about, regardless of whether you're a business owner, whether you're in sales, whether you're in operations, wherever you're at. Also, some common misconceptions about millennials and some advice for you on how to keep them from leaving your business. So make sure to listen to the end of this interview. I'm going to share a link to the show notes. I've also got some resources I'm going to share with you if you're a business owner or if you're a project leader as well. Make sure to listen to the end. I've got some free stuff I want to get in your hands. But without further ado, here's my interview with Luiza Mills. Enjoy. Luiza, thanks so much for being on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for including Interstate as a voice to consider for your listeners.
Absolutely. I appreciate you reaching out and being willing to share some of the strategies that your company's using. And the strategies that we're going to be talking about today are those that are being used to address the problem that I read about in the news on a daily basis, and it's the labor shortage in the construction industry. Everywhere you look, in all markets, there aren't enough skilled labor. There's not enough skilled labor. There are more people leaving the industry than there are coming in. We have high turnover. In the millennial demographic, I saw a statistic where 38% of people under the age of 25 in the construction industry are quitting their job every year, some of which are probably leaving the industry, some are changing jobs. But suffice it to say that we have a big problem and it's not really getting better. So your company has developed some interesting strategies to address that problem. We're going to talk about that. But if you could, tell us a little bit about your company, the name of your company, the type of work you do, where you're at in the country, and give us some indications of the size of your company, if you would.
Of course, thank you. So the company is Interstate Electrical. We are located throughout New England with our primary headquarters in the state of Massachusetts. We have 600 plus employees strong, and we recently celebrated our 50th anniversary. We are proud also to announce we still have our first initial hire, who is an electrician still in the field, so we're very proud of that fact as well. We love to, our big discussion is we really enjoy the fact that we do offer more than just your basic install process. You know, we cover everything from design build on through latest technology, through prefabrication and lean methodology. So we try to always reinvest in the company and in the employees and continuing to try to stay as current and ahead of the game as possible.
Excellent. So you're feeling the pain of the labor shortage, and you shared with me 3 strategies that your company is using to address that issue. And the first is apprenticeships. Tell us about what an apprenticeship, first of all, how an apprenticeship program can help solve this problem and why companies should consider setting up or being part of an apprenticeship program.
So in particular in the electrical trade, and depending on which state someone is operating out of, the apprenticeship program, a lot of them do require a registration through the state. In even the ones that don't, you still need to follow a certain course of schooling. What is very exciting about the program itself is while you're going through the apprenticeship program, which is on average a 4-year program, you also can at the same time have a job. So you're getting not just the school technical aspect of it, but you're also getting the hands-on on-the-job training for it. And what is very dynamic about that is, for example, for interstate, we cover the cost of the apprenticeship schooling. Even if we didn't, because there may be companies out there that's just not an option for them to be able to afford someone, the programs themselves are very, very affordable. So someone could honestly go through that program and leave debt-free all along while the time they've already invested in an employer and the employer's invested in them, where they've now not only just gotten the school practical, but they've also gotten the hand-on training. They've left school now debt-free. They actually are heading down a career path. They've gotten benefits, everything from health insurance to vacation to paid time off, and all the while, again, without having that burden in the back of this loan that they need to pay at the end when all is said and done.
Sounds great for the employee, but what are some of the benefits to the business owner for being a part of or having their own apprenticeship program?
So for the company itself, it allows us to, again, invest in the employee and identify strengths and weaknesses. What is it that we need to work on? What is it that we can continue to mold for that person? How do we learn from them as well? One of the things that we're very big on, especially we talk about millennials, the millennials actually help empower us. They help us challenge things in a different way to say, well, why is there a better way to do this? Why is this so manual, or is there software or technology to make this transition for me easier? So based on, gone are the days from before on how the trainings used to be. Things are very different now. People are looking at things differently and trying to find not the easy way out, but a more optimum way to how to do something. So by empowering also these individuals to, and listening to what they have to say and how they view things, it enables us to restructure our program so that we continue to be more marketable as well for future candidates to be part of our team. It also allows us to, again, reinvent ourselves and identify what is the direction that the industry is coming in or going to. These potentially are future customers of ours, whether they're internal employees of ours or they leave to go somewhere else. It is important that we also learn from them and adapt from them so that we take the best of what we know and the best of what they're challenging us on so that we can continue to proceed down the line.
Before we move on to the next strategy, I want to talk a little bit about millennials, because there's a lot of talk about millennials and I think a lot of misconceptions. For example, somebody sent me a message about young people these days are all programmed to think of whatever it was. It was a pretty negative, stereotypical type comment. But what are some of the misconceptions about the millennial generation that people need to be aware of and that are holding companies back?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure we have all the answers, but one thing that we've learned, and we've been following this for quite some time, and no longer are millennials in their 20s anymore. They're now approaching their 30s or into their 30s. One of the biggest things is I think everyone assumes they're lazy and they're not committed, and they want the easy way out. And obviously there's always maybe some truth to some of that, but what we find is that they actually, again, it's not that they want an easy way out. They know that there's probably a better way. They've been brought up asking that question, well, why? Why do I have to do it this way? Is there a better way? Or I read about something. Why aren't we using this? And I think if people just kind of took a step back and listened to what they were saying versus rolling of the eyes and this will never work and getting rid of those phrases of we've always done it this way, that's not going to work, or the industry won't ever accept that methodology. Instead of viewing it that way and actually taking the opportunity to say, okay, well, let's stop and listen, and maybe it would work or maybe it wouldn't, they feel like they're part of the solution, and we want them to be part of the solution. So together, the millennials with the core group that has been in the trade, that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s now, it allows this really great balance of the stableness of the platform, but the nuance of what's coming to the table and really how they think. And there's so much strength in numbers with these individuals that they all think that way. They're not asking the question to be annoying or lazy. They're asking because they truly want to understand, why is it that you've always done something the same way over and over again? And is there a better way? And I think people really need to listen to what they're saying. They also really want to be part of the solution. They're not necessarily looking at just the dollar or the titles. They want to know that they're contributing to the success of the team. And I think that's also very critical for someone to really embrace. The other thing is, I think it's also important for employees to understand that millennials are not looking for a career with the same person perhaps for 15, 20, 30 years. That's not their makeup. I think if you can retain them as long as you can and keep offering growth, that'll be tremendous. But on average, you're looking at 3 to 5 years before they move on for the next opportunity. And an employer can't view that as a negative. It's not a hurtful thing that they're doing. It's just, again, the makeup of how they've been raised, and they're ready for the next challenge to add to their portfolio.
I think a lot of people would see that 3 to 5 year average tenure as a negative. What would you say to those folks so that they would not see it as a complete negative?
I mean, again, I think it is what it is, unfortunately. You can only change so much. I think the best thing to do is identify really working with those individuals and offering them a growth plan. And, what is that growth plan? And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be titles, but how is it that that individual will continue to stay motivated and challenged and feel that they're part of an organization that is also ahead of the times and growing and contributing back to society. So I think the big thing is self-reflect and really identify who you are today as an organization and what is it that you really need to do to change. And change is tough, but it is something that is very critical in anything. As far as the negative, we won't be able to change if someone leaves in 3 to 5 years. Hopefully we can extend that timeline as much as we possibly can. But the key is, what do you do to supplement that? So the things that we're doing as an organization is constantly offering new opportunities for people to continuously to be able to come into the organization. And we hope that the ones we have will continue to stay. We have not had a lot of turnover in our millennials at this stage. But again, it could happen. So we are already prepared for, let's continue to recruit new talent so they can continue to grow and learn. So there's always different levels of people in the organization. We also, again, try to go back and really reinvest in what can we do to offset not having these individuals here. If they left tomorrow, what do we need to do to still suffice our customer base, both internally and externally? We are in the installation business, and we need to make sure that we can supply that. And that's where we also think outside of the norm with, for example, lean methodologies and prefabrication, new technologies. What is it, again, that we can keep adding that will help supplement and add extra efficiencies so that when it does come to that crunch time, it'll be tough, but we can still get through it.
Excellent. And we're going to talk about prefabrication, lean methodologies, as well as the role of women in the skilled construction trades as well, how that's a potential solution. But one more question about the millennial conversation before we shift gears. By hiring millennials, we're trying to solve the generation gap by bringing
Yeah.
people in to solve it. But in a lot of companies, as we mentioned, the average age of the electricians and bricklayers and other skilled trades is increasing. So there could be a 20 to 30 year gap between millennials and folks who are currently in the business that survived the 2008 recession. Is there some level or some amount of training necessary, not just for the millennials, but also for the current employees to try to reduce and solve this generation gap? Because it can't just be one-sided. It has to be, there has to be some give and take on all parts. So is that something that your company has seen, that there needs to be some work done with the incumbent employees to accept the new generation?
Absolutely. It's a very educational process from all different levels, whether it's the management side, it's the supervisor, the project superintendent. It is very important that everyone fully understands the dynamic of who is on their team. And it's not so much just about the who, but why. What is it that we're looking at, and what is our structure? This company, for example, Interstate, at one point the average tenure was in the 20s. And now with the new millennials and the change and people are retiring out, we've dropped that now closer to the 13-year mark. So it is important that people understand why. It's not necessarily because of something that's going wrong or not going right. It is just a sign of the times. And how do we deal with that? One of the things that we found was a lot of, especially people that had been with the organization quite some time, they were taking it personal if a millennial did happen to leave. And the millennial would say, no, I loved it here. It was a great experience. I learned so much, but now I want to go bartend in New York City. And this is a true story, actually. This individual had an opportunity to become a bartender for the summer in a major outfit in New York City, and he took advantage of it. What was interesting also about that individual is that he called us back after. So now, do we want a lot of that bouncing back and forth? Of course not. It's not the optimal situation, but it is important for two things. One is the manager to know it's not anything he or she did incorrectly or could have done better. It just, this person wanted the opportunity, and that was their vision. And then it's important that that individual recognize, is the grass always greener on the other side? Does it make sense to have that much different experiences added to your portfolio? And there's no one easy answer for that. But again, the key is making sure individuals who especially are on the management side understand the makeup of our organization. It is making sure the individuals that do come in have a proper foundation, they have a proper voice, and they feel that they have an avenue to continue to grow. And hopefully the two of those together help mitigate and that situation of the constant jumping in and out of an organization, and also extend the longevity of someone staying with the organization.
Good advice. Great advice. Let's talk about the next opportunity. It's either we'll call it a strategy or an opportunity to address the labor shortage issue, and that involves bringing more women into your trade. Can you tell us what your company is doing to take advantage of that opportunity?
Yes, that's a great question. And one thing we haven't learned in prefab is how to clone women. If we could, we wouldn't be having this discussion, perhaps. So one of the things we do is we try to go out and just talk to the different community centers, different schools. We, of course, run your typical advertisements for it, but we really try to get in front of individuals that normally wouldn't have an opportunity to learn about the trade. It has been a challenge, but we have been successful in doing so. We would love to be more successful in that. But it's really the word of mouth and getting the word of mouth out there. We're very fortunate in the state of Massachusetts. We have a new Secretary of Labor who really seems to really fully understand this initiative as well, and is really, I believe, going to be a strong voice to help businesses and help women understand there are more opportunities out there. But we can tell you internally we've had some great success stories. We have one woman who joined us. She was a high school dropout, a mother, single mother, worked in the fast food restaurant industry for quite some time. We were able to have her start with us through a local community agency, and she is now one of our top performers and just shy of being able to get her license. We have many, many success stories of that nature, so it's not one answer, but it can't be just through the vocational schools, unfortunately. It has to be through I would start at the middle schools. If you can get in front of middle school students before they go into high school, that is huge. If you can get to a sophomore or junior in high school before they graduate, again, that's tremendous. Work with your local community centers. There's a ton of women who wouldn't even know that this is an opportunity for them, or they're discouraged from doing it. And you can even bring them on through temp agencies. And I know not a lot of people like to do that, but if you have a really great local source or sources, that you can have someone even just come in and tour your facility and identify that this is a viable opportunity. Those have been some of our best hires.
There's a lot of misconceptions on both sides of that equation. Misconceptions about women in construction and misconceptions about construction in the minds of a lot of women. Let's start with the misconceptions about the industry in the minds of women. What are those, and what can we do, or what's your team doing to reverse those misconceptions?
It's interesting. It's very frustrating, I think, at times for all of us, especially people that are in the trade. People view the trade, whether it's electrical or whichever portion of the trade that you happen to be in, as if it's still operating in the 1930s, which is very unfortunate. And even individuals who have a powerful voice. For example, Mr. Robert Rake, I believe, or Ray is how you say his name. He was former U.S. Secretary of Labor, worked under Clinton administration, and prior also served under Ford and Carter in other capacities. Very, very educated individual, a tremendous amount of experience in our overall national education system. He was on NPR the other day, great talking points about same topics that we're discussing today. And one thing where he fell short, this is my opinion, of course, was he still refers to the trade as technicians and as a manual people who can work manually with their hands. And that in itself is a little, I think, unfortunate, because this really has to be viewed as a career. It is truly a career opportunity, and we're not operating in the 30s anymore. There's tremendous technology out there. There's advances in everything, tools. Think of it as how we stream music today. We're not buying 8-track cassettes or albums anymore, unless you're a DJ perhaps, but people are streaming music right off of their phone or their computer or their headset, whatever it is that they have. We didn't do away with music. We just made it easier. And that's the same thing that we're doing today. I do believe, and even some of the women we have on board today, they are absolutely discouraged from coming. I think whether it's a social worker that maybe isn't educated enough to understand about the trade, schools keep pushing everyone to get a college degree. There's not enough exposure for anyone to truly understand what it is that the trade does today. And what we're trying to do, and we're just one voice, and hopefully there's others doing the same, and I'm confident that there are, is really getting out there and showing that that's not the case. And sometimes people need to see it firsthand, but it really is not what it was before.
Yeah, and I would agree. I'm on construction job sites several times a week, and we're not talking about people standing on I-beams 800 feet off the ground throwing hot rivets at each other, or carrying buckets of concrete. It's not all manual labor, and there's so many things that are highly technical. And frankly, in my experience, women are much better equipped and much more adept at the details. Most of the guys, it seems like in construction, the type A, I live in the South, and we have the get her done type guys who are really good at getting the first 90% done, but it's the last 2 or 3% that really matters. And the people that I've found who are best at the details and getting the last 2 or 3% done, well, I'll quote Dave Ramsey from Entree Leadership. He has what he calls, on any big project, they hire a vice president of the last 2%, or the last 5%. And he said, our ideal vice president of the last 2% is a woman, and she is a mother, because they're really good at getting the details done, and they don't quit until they're done. Whereas most guys, we lose interest in the details and we move on to the next thing. So those are some misconceptions about the industry from women. What are some of the misconceptions about women entering the trades that business owners need to be aware of? These lenses that people are looking at the world through that just aren't accurate.
That's a great question as well. And I do believe it's that I think there's still this fear that women won't work well in an all-male or predominantly male environment. And I think they're not giving credit to the males that they have on their team. Again, these males have also progressed. They're not living in the 1930s, and just like we're talking about. And I do believe that there's more of this uniform approach. Everyone is, people are really giving each other an opportunity to work together, regardless of, sex, gender, race, religion, anything of that nature. But there still is that underlying, is it okay to put them out there? What if someone uses a swear word? And I really think that that's just an archaic way of people viewing things. I also think that no matter what, there's still a perception that can a woman do the same heavy lifting as a job, where in reality, and you brought it up yourself, when you go on a construction job today versus even in the last 10 years, it is very different. It is extremely different. People are using drones. They're using 3D modeling. They're using robotics, Trimble. Such different technology, let alone the tools and how much they've advanced over the years. And there is no one who's not capable to be able to do that, providing they have the right drive and education for it. But yes, there is still that very big misconception of it's maybe not ladylike, or we would be afraid that they're going to be exposed to something that they won't like or won't be fair to them. And I truly, truly don't believe that that's the case anymore.
And maybe some of those guys are thinking we'll have to start behaving a little bit better and perhaps clean up our language a little bit. And
exactly.
Which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing either. Okay, so we talked about
I agree.
We talked about two strategies: apprenticeships and attracting more women into the trades. Let's talk about how your company is using lean manufacturing methods to solve the labor shortage problem.
Yes, there is a lot of information on lean manufacturing, and someone could spend hours just on all the different links and books out there on the topic. What we've done as Interstate is we've taken the segment that really makes sense for us and fits into our organization. And really what that is we want to eliminate the waste on the day-to-day and focus on the value-add features. And what that is we had to self-reflect and really identify internally as who are we and what are we doing current state. And from there, once we've identified that, was identifying who our internal and external customer was. And it was very, very critical to identify that internal customer. If you don't, you can have a phenomenal group of doers, but you'll be working in a silo, and you're just making your job that much harder. Whereas once you identify who your next customer is, and it could be an admin, it could be a detailer, it could be whoever that is, once you identify who that customer is, it then helps you get a clearer understanding of what you need to provide to that customer. And all of that is a domino effect, which leads to the end customer, which is the install, which is what we do as an installer, and we supply to our client. But if we can't suffice the internal customer first, then it will impact the external customer. once we've identified what some of those current state issues or situations were, we also then empowered the doers. So gone, I think, are the days where it's management top-down, where someone hands someone a binder and states you follow steps 1 through 10 and you don't veer from that. We now take the actual people that are doing that specific function, and those are the individuals that are challenged to say, okay, how do you make this better? How do you eliminate those extra steps that are not needed in your job? Or that are redundant and really fall under someone else, and how do you now take the piece that is really critical for your next customer and continue to make that better? And by the way, once you find that, we want you to go back and try to make it better again. We're not looking for 100% achievement at each stage, but even if they made it 10% better today, that's 10% better across the board than it was 2 days ago.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in empowered execution, in empowering the people closest to the problem, giving them the resources and the decision-making ability and the empowerment to solve the problem and be part of the process. I've found that not only do you get better end results, but it builds a rock-solid team, because I've found that when people are part of the solution, part of the plan, they will run through walls to make sure that that plan succeeds. Whereas if they're simply handed a plan and said, here, you get paid for what you've got from your neck down, I don't pay you to think, then that kills motivation. They don't bring their A game. You're not getting all their ideas and the collective wisdom that you have in your entire team if you're just telling people what to do. So I actually put out a couple of videos. One about empowered execution is over at constructionleadingedge.com/leader. And I've got another one about a paradigm shift. I found, or I believe, that we're in the midst of, and we need a paradigm shift when it comes to leadership, shifting from the old mindset of I tell you what to do and you do it, to a new paradigm of I'll tell you what needs to be done, and then I'll tell you why it's important, and then you work out all the details. So I think you guys you're on the right track.
Thank you. And we do try to live that. We tell people it's not a one and done project, but this is our culture. And it even ties back into the job site. We had gotten away from, if you talk about an electrician and what it is that they're actually trained to do, over the years, over the decades, they started to become responsible for everything. They would receive product, they were purchasing, they were expediting, they were material coordination, material placement, they would handle returns. I mean, you name the gamut. They handled everything on top of what it was they were trained and really looking to do as a career. We now, through this lean methodology and through our prefabrication and an operations center, we take that noise away so that when they're ready to receive product, we supply it to them where we've already checked it and we've already identified if something is incorrect or there's an error. So we've eliminated that noise and allowed them to now really feel excited about what they do on the day-to-day, and by the way, come up with something else that maybe we haven't thought of.
That brings up a good point. You've used the term internal customers a few times in our conversation, and I noticed on your website there's a statement in your profile that says Human Resources provides consistent and fair quality internal customer service to all interstate employees. And what I'm hearing you say is that you have a prefabrication operations center, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they have internal customers whom they are supporting, whether it's the installation crews, and then it sounds like you have this network of internal customers, which is, I think, a little different way to think about an organization, to think of internal customers. Can you tell us a little bit about how your company culture is set up as it relates to this term internal customer service?
Of course. So one thing we do is when a new hire comes on board is we make sure that they understand who their internal customer is. Even if it's just at an interim stage, it is important that they understand that whatever they do however they do it impacts this next phase or this next person or next entity. So right from day one, we make sure that everyone fully understands who that internal customer is. It didn't happen overnight. It took us, again, we had to do some soul searching, and what we identified from our overall existing team is we had a lot of doers. A lot of people just picked up the ball and they ran with it, which was great, and it made the company successful. But as we continue to really identify what we called at the time our current state, and we really mapped it out again with these individuals that were the doers, so that they were the ones telling us and everybody what they were doing on the day-to-day, there was definitely a pattern of identifying those silos. And because we were identifying those silos, we were missing all of the internal components and focusing on everything everyone thought they were doing was for the end result for the client, whereas in the reality of it was, yes, we sufficed the client, and of course we would love to say we were doing it better than the next person, but we were probably doing it just as good or just as great as our best competitor. And we needed to change that dynamic. We needed to really stop adding all those additional steps and bypassing all these layers and being redundant, because there was some redundancy as well, to truly take a step back and say, well, okay, so by me making these assumptions, I've actually now caused this person an extra 6 hours at the end of the week. And so it was really something that had to be a value stream mapping of what it is that we were dealing with, and then taking one piece at a time and developing it from there. And when I talk about the developing, it was, again, those doers that were now they were the ones coming up with the strategy. And they owned it.
Is part of that process, what I heard you say was that you found that you had a lot of electricians. Your electricians were doing everything necessary, from ordering
Correct.
materials, receiving materials, handling returns, actually doing their installation work. Was part of this the lean methodology? Was it stripping away and consolidating some of those activities, taking non-installation activities off the plate of your installation crews and centralizing those tasks? Is that part of the process?
That was a big part of the process. So again, we wanted the average electrician, and this is a national average. If anybody was to look and say, how much time does someone actually use in a 6-hour day or an 8-hour day to install? It was interesting. Some numbers were coming back as 2 to 3 hours. And nobody believed that, because, again, an electrician is thinking, there's no way. I am busy as soon as I walk into that job site, and even after I go home, especially if they're a supervisor, I am nonstop doing stuff. So in their mind, they were installing that full entire time. Once we started breaking down that noise, it was then clearly evident that, no, you weren't installing for an 8-hour day. And that wasn't a punishment. That was, how did we get to this, and how do we change that paradigm for you? It also helps, again, with ergonomics. It helps with safety. It helps eliminate just even that normal noise and waste on a job site that you see regularly of people running back and forth, grabbing material, for example. If you're working on a multi-story building and you constantly have to come back down and break down a skid to find the lamp that you need, or the wire spool, or whatever that might be for the 30th floor, it's time consuming, and now that's taking away from the true capacity of what it is that you're setting out to do. So those were a lot of those eye-opening moments that we identified. So it wasn't so much stripping down their role, it was really more taking the noise out of it and allowing them to focus on the install.
Yeah, great advice. I've had experience doing the same thing, identifying who your revenue producers are, and then I called it load shedding, very similar to what happens in the electrical distribution industry, shedding unnecessary load so that they can be more efficient. So if you're listening to this, I would encourage you to think about your field installation crews, the people who are really driving revenue, putting work in place, and helping to shed the non-revenue producing load from their day. offload that, have somebody else pick up materials, have somebody put the material in place for them, do prefabrication, keep them out of meetings, leave them alone. If you're a micromanager,
Yeah.
let them do their job. So I appreciate you clarifying that. Well, we're just about out of time. I have one more question for you, Luiza, before we talk about how people can get in touch with you. And that is a lot of people that I talk to in the audience, they're growing because of where the industry is right now. And they're small to medium-sized businesses. They don't have the benefit of having your expertise in human resources and hiring and recruiting. So could you give a few pointers to the small business owners out there who are in a situation where they need to make a key hire? Could be a project manager, a superintendent, someone they need to go find someone outside of their organization to help them get their business to the next level. What are a few tips or things to think about that you would offer to someone in that situation?
Again, I know that it's a struggle also with the talent gap issue that everyone is having, but I do believe the talent is out there. One of the top pieces of advice that I would give is that don't follow the norm, meaning it is okay if someone hasn't stayed in the same employment for the last 10, 20, 30 years and has jumped around. Thinking of that millennial mindset, sometimes people shy away from seeing too much activity on someone's resume, and those could be some of our best candidates right now. So it is okay to see that as a positive and not as a negative. That would probably be one of the biggest ones. People, I think, still look at applicants based on longevity at their prior employers, and that I don't think that should be viewed that way anymore. The other aspect is I also think it's okay to find somebody outside the industry. We've been extremely successful as long as you're willing to invest the time, and the time really is something you have to do anyway. It's not we can't keep walking away from this. There's people that are still talking about the same thing and haven't done anything, and now here they are 3, 4, 5 years into it, and they're no better than what they were. So if you do think that I can invest a year, 18 months, 2 years in an individual and ramp them up to help supplement or offset what they may not have, but I love all these other qualities about them, I would highly encourage bringing that person on board. Not only will they outperform, but they will also bring something new to the table that probably wouldn't have existed before if we keep doing that same cookie cutter job description or job scope. So I do believe that. And I also think also start looking outside of the normal industry methods. The vocational schools are tremendous, and of course we want to continue to support them, but there's such tremendous talent that sometimes even comes from other areas that maybe it's somebody specializes in fire alarm, but doesn't know that they should be coming into this, and that might be not a great example, but we have carpenters, we have chefs, we have a variety of different people that have made this a second career and are some of our quicker performing individuals. So I would recommend don't follow the stereotype.
Excellent advice. Well, this has been extremely helpful. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and the strategies that your company has been implementing. If people want to get in touch with you, if they have questions, where's the best place for them to go, or how can they get in touch with you, Luiza?
So email's great. That's a great avenue, which is lmills@IES as in Sam, C as in cat, the number 1.com.
So I'll list your email address. I'll also list your company's website, a link to your company's website in the show notes for this podcast, and I'll have a link for that at the end of this. I really appreciate your time. Luiza, is there anything else you'd like to cover that you feel like we need to share with the folks listening who are trying to solve the labor shortage problem?
Again, I think that people need to understand we're still in this for a while. It's not, it didn't happen overnight, and it's not going away overnight. But I think that people just don't give up, and the more strength in numbers and the more attention we have to being able to talk about this topic, also talking to local state representatives as well to help in the voice and the message. I think that's very important so that we're all on the same page.
Good stuff. Thanks again. If you're listening to this and you'd like to find out more, I would encourage you to contact Luiza. I'll have a link with her to her company's website as well as her email address in the show notes. And Luiza, thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful. And I would encourage you, if you got something out of this, send Luiza an email and say thank you. Let her know how much you appreciate it. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
There you go. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you got some good advice from that. I hope you actually put that advice to work that you got from Luiza. I have a few resources for you, a couple of links. If you want the show notes for this podcast episode, go to constructionleadingedge.com/070. It's episode 70, constructionleadingedge.com/070. If you are a construction business owner, I have two things that I want to put in your hands. One is a 25-point construction business checkup. You know, if you take a piece of equipment in for maintenance, they're going to do an 80-point checkup, 167-point checkup on that piece of equipment, and you're probably doing that 3 or 4 times a year, but are you doing that with your business? So if you want to take a 25-point checkup on your business to see how your business is running, go to constructionleadingedge.com/checkup. There's a brief video there and a 25-point checkup that you can download. It's a one-pager. It'll take you a few minutes, and it'll tell you how your business is running in some of the most important areas in my experience. Secondly, for you construction business owners out there, I've got a free video series that I want to get in your hands, and I call it the Hacks and Secrets for Construction Business Owners. You're going to get some cash flow tips that may save you up to $52,000 a year if you have 5 employees. You're going to learn about the 5 levels of delegation that every business owner needs to understand. What are some mindset issues that are holding you back? And you'll also learn about a hidden cost that doesn't show up in your bank statement, but it's probably hitting your bottom line. If you want to get your free video series, go to constructionleadingedge.com/owner. OWNER, and I'll send those videos to you. Also, if you are a project leader, if you're a superintendent, a project manager, a foreman, a team lead, if you lead projects or you want to lead projects, I've got a free video series for you as well. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/leader, LEADER, and you'll have a video right there about empowered execution. This is one of the most important leadership principles that I want to get in your hands. I think everybody needs to know about it. But you'll learn about the principle that helped shift the balance of power in the war on terror in the Middle East, as well as was the reason for success for the Allies on D-Day. Very powerful principle. I want to get it in your hands. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/leader to get that video. As I mentioned, go to constructionleadingedge.com/070 for the show notes. As always, I appreciate the reviews. And if you could leave a review for the podcast, that would be tremendous. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Go get those videos. Take action, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.